I know that before I got there, they shot a rattlesnake and they put it in a whiskey bottle, but the whiskey wasn't high enough proof.
Oh, no.
So it decayed?
So it started decaying.
Oh,
Yeah.
God, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Do they drink it?
Yes.
Probably.
Oh, that's just awful.
All right, it's time for another episode. Let's get started, everybody.
Hey, Sohan, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Richard?
Doing great. It's great to be back. I brought Ryan.
Great to have you, Ryan. It's great having you.
And Ryan is actually a giant foodie nerd, and he's got a certain philosophy that he thought he might want to bring to us today. And what was that philosophy you wanted?
So jumping into it, whenever I'm talking to people about anything that they are a nerd about or anything that they're really excited about, I don't want them to start with, oh, I have this really cool thing that I think you'll like. I want to talk to them about, okay, what's your experiences with it and how has your journey kind of gone to get you to this point? And I want to, as best I can, participate in that journey. So I kind of understand where you came from and what you're doing. And I admittedly, even though I love flavors and I've done all the kind of food things, I have never really done tea. So whenever Richard texts me, he's like, hey, you want to do this? It's like, yes, because I think this would be cool.
Got you, bro.
So here we are.
Excited to have you. Yeah, awesome. Well, to that end, since I did know about this prompt, I pulled out the tea that does that for me. So the difference between tea and whiskey is that I started drinking tea when I was a baby. You could start drinking whiskey when you're a baby, but not advised. If you did, then that's on your parents. But anyway, I started drinking tea before I could remember. Mm-hmm. And so the tea, because my dad's from Hong Kong, so that's part of our culture growing up. We'd go eat dim sum. Dim sum is tea cuisine. That's what makes dim sum dim sum.
Oh, okay.
So just like tapas is wine cuisine, it was developed to be around wine. Dim sum is tea cuisine. All of those dishes are designed to go with tea, especially this kind of tea. This is one of the most classic dim sum teas. It's actually a blend of pu'er, shu pu'er, so fermented tea, which is the type of tea that I usually serve to whiskey people.
Okay.
Right, because it's aged, it's fermented, it's earthy, it's dark, and then white chrysanthemum flowers. And the Cantonese pu'er is called bo lei cha, and this kind of flower, the chrysanthemum, is called guk fa, so they call it Guk Bo. If you combine these two, it's called Guk Bo, and this is like a classic dim sum. It cuts, the pu'er is astringent and it cuts through the fat of the food that you're eating.
Okay.
And then the flowers have this kind of cooling, slippery texture to them, and just a really nice thing to drink while you're eating dim sum. All these little snacky things.
Cool.
So I'll pass it around like this so you can check it out, smell it. You're not going to smell the tea much because this tea's aged. It's 2021. It's not super old, but it's not young either.
Smells good.
So dim sum often is like a once a week type of thing, but it seems to be becoming more of a everyday thing. Is that cultural or?
If you can do it every day, then you do it every day. If you're retired and you're all set and you've got your bird and you're bringing your bird to the place and you got your homies and they go to get dim sum every day, then you're doing it every day. That's like the Canto grandpa dream, Cantonese grandpa dream reality is just getting dim sum every day, bringing your bird. Dim sum is tea food, first tea that I ever really remember drinking and being like, because my dad would let me order the tea because I was a little baby, but I liked drinking the tea, and that was some of the few words I knew in Cantonese had to do with eating, food, and tea. And so I would order the tea, and this is the tea that I would order most of the time would be this. It's really pretty. It's got that black leaves and those white flowers.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, it's really nice. And then it's just, we don't do a lot of blended teas here. Having two different plants in the same pot is very unusual for us, because in this style, this is called gong fu cha, this particular style of tea culture, you're usually doing the single plant, but this is such a classic combination, such a classic blend. I'm using a brand new gaiwan that we just got. This is by a local potter named Isabel Glathorn. So she made this, and we just got these maybe 2 days ago. So very excited about these. I'm going to let you smell it again now that it has been woken up. There you go.
And these tea sets are all available in the tea shop?
Oh yeah. Yeah, Isabel, she made a bunch of those gaiwans. They're really nice.
That smells amazing. Like I said, I'm trying not to pick up another expensive hobby. I have too many right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that smells lovely.
That's very nice.
So you're getting both the earthiness of the pour, and then that kind of chrysanthemum. So, yeah, it's a very simple tea. It's very classic. It's not just the plain tea, it's blended, but I really like it. And then we're just going to pour off the first steeping. She made this mushroom also, Isabel. Very talented potter, excited to have her tea pet mushrooms and her gaiwans in store. But yeah, this is the first tea I remember knowing was a tea and knowing by name and thinking to myself as I like this type of tea. And we're going to drink some now. I'll give you just the most easiest and most simple of tasting instructions. It's definitely not complicated. And then I'd love to hear about your whiskey version of this tea. Your Guk Bo.
It's got a nice color too.
Ironically enough, whenever you were talking about the whiskey at a young age, my introduction to whiskey was actually at a very young age. I remember trying it with my grandfather, probably 11, 12 years old, and even growing up in the South, whenever kids were gumming and their teeth were coming in, it wasn't uncommon to put a little bit of whiskey on their gums to kind of help numb it a little bit. So that's something that I grew up kind of understanding as being normal, and apparently it's not.
What's normal? You know, what does that word even mean? You turned out great. You're here. You know, you might have dedicated your life to whiskey, but that's probably coincidence. So we're gonna go and smell it first, then slurp it, and then after you swallow, exhale through the nose, and that's where you get the fragrance of that chrysanthemum. It's not a floral fragrance. Chrysanthemum is not a floral tasting flower.
It's a light mintiness to it as well.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's got an herbal quality, and it's kind of musky. And then you've got that earthy, dark pu'er taste that is over it. And this, like whiskey, gets better with age, but it doesn't have to be in a barrel. It can be anywhere.
Now, for me, my introductions to whiskey has been mostly through bars and restaurants that I've worked in, and it's mostly commercially available whiskey. So when I'm introduced to bourbons, it's Well bourbons or Jack Daniel's, Jim Beam. Things like that, and it's like, well, I guess I don't like bourbon, and then my introduction to Scotch was going to be things like Johnny Walker Red, and and then my single malts would be Glenlivet, and it's like, well, I guess maybe I don't like Scotch, and then the next thing is that I was trying was things like. No, I'm totally lost. but trying things that were commercially available, large quantities, large productions, they didn't have a lot of flavor to them, and they weren't really piquing that little. This is something that I would like. Going back to being young, it was after parents have parties and there's beer bottles left over and there's little sips left in the bottom of the beer bottle, and that's the nastiest thing that you can.
Yeah. You definitely don't want to drink that. So, what was your grandpa's whiskey that you got into when you were a wee lad?
Weller 107.
Classy.
Yes. So my grandfather tells a story all the time about when he was in North Carolina many, many years ago, and he tried it, was on end cap, and got it and absolutely loved it, and that has become his go-to. And me being a good grandson and who's also kind of a whiskey nerd, I do not believe in chasing bottles. I do not believe in finding unicorns, things like that, except if I can find 107, I will get a bottle of 107. And MSRP on this is normally what, $50 maybe?
Right.
I have paid upwards of $250 for a bottle because my grandfather didn't have any.
Hey,
And I got it. Got it shipped to his house. He opened the package. He's like, oh. And he kind of looked at me like, don't ask. Just enjoy. So I make sure he always has at least a bottle or two of 107 at his house. And this is actually the one whenever he comes to my house that we drink. But in the memory of this and kind of with what we're talking about, I figured we would have some and try it.
Absolutely.
So,
is there anything in tea that would be really hard to find, highly sought after, more expensive than it probably should be?
Yes. I mean, yeah, it's the same thing. Anything that's rare. If it's rare and people want it, then it's going to get expensive. We've got a being here called Doomroy that is like a $400, $500 being. A being is a cake of tea. It's 357 grams. Tea. It's like it's about this big, right? It's all tea all pressed together, and Yeah, that's got a year on the back. It's got wrapped in paper. It's got a stamp on the back with the year. It's got a special ticket pressed into it so it can't be counterfeited. And you take the cake of tea and you use this knife, a cha dao, and you break off chunks of it and you steep it just like we're doing now. I'm using loose tea, but I could have been using this pressed tea just as easily. And those individual, especially the big factory bings, they've got numbers like 7562, like 8594, et cetera. And these designate the year the recipe was made, what the grade that's being used in, and what factory made it. And so people will be like, oh, the 2008 of 7562 is a really, really good one. If you can find that one, then that's really expensive if it's authentic. For us, we've got a tea called Dumroy, which is a 2005 Sheng Pu'er, pretty old, reasonably old, coming up on 20 years now. But beyond that, I really like that tea. And it burned down, the rest of it burned down in a fire. So Li Shulin's, his whole tea store burned down in a fire in 2021. It's like the Library of Alexandria, for tea, for me, for us, burning down. But he lost it all, but we still have some, right? So we've got some of these cakes left. So those cakes went way up in price, way up. And it's great, it's worth it. But it's not expensive because it's just because it's good. It's expensive because we can't get any more.
Yeah.
And if we never sell another cake of it, that's fine by me. I will drink it. I'm fine just having that and drinking it. So, we just jacked it way up. But that's what you'll see. And then there's teas that just start off rare. They're rare to begin with. Taiping Hokui, Great Peace Monkey Chief. They just don't make a lot in any given year. Junshan Yinzhen has to come from a little island in the middle of Dongting Lake. It's less than a square kilometer. So you can't grow that much tea there. And so that's going to be an expensive tea right from the get-go.
Is there any counterfeiting happening in tea? Because this happens in the wine world. There was a famous wine counterfeiter who ended up creating a vintage that never existed. And that's how he got caught. But he was also seen as a reputable person to be able to, the same thing in the art world, where the person who's doing the verification of the product was the counterfeiter. So but in the world of whiskey, we have a lot of online buyers and sellers, people that are traveling to multiple states trying to find products, and then in the bars and the restaurants that have these bottles, they have a tax stamp on it that needs to get scraped off. But if you can get that off without too much of a mess and maybe save the label, there are marks on these Buffalo Trace products that tell you when it was made, so that we can find some of these counterfeits. But the online market is problematic because of that. You may not be getting what you're buying.
Yes, absolutely, this counterfeit tea. And when you've got a being like that, you can take a cake of tea and unwrap it and put an older wrapper or a more sought-after wrapper on it, which is why they have what's called a neife, which is a ticket with the info of the pressing on it that is pressed into the cake in between the leaves. So they take the leaves, they weigh them out, put the ticket in it, and then they steam the whole mess of stuff. They press it with a stone, and then you've got this ticket just buried in this cake. And eventually you break it out, and you can pick it up and read it if you can get it out in one piece. But that's to prevent counterfeiting. But nonetheless, there's still a ton of counterfeiting. And I'd love to get into this guy.
So,
not ready for it.
Weller
It smells
107,
from the air.
107 proof. And Richard, as far as the terroir in the background and everything else, he's gonna have to explain that to you because again, I don't get into learning all of that. So with me, with tasting, what I normally tell people is take a sip with your mouth open, get the flavors, or not take a sip, take a smell with your mouth open, let the flavors roll down, and then take a sip, swallow it, take one more sip, and close your eyes and just say the first thing that comes to mind.
Ooh.
Not your flavor, not, oh, I get hints of cow intestines, nothing like that. Just what do you pick up first?
1 second.
Did you break a microphone?
I think, no, I didn't break it. It unpinched itself from my clothes. I told you about that pinch. I could just not move my head. Okay. Mouth open, sniff.
Yeah. So no analytical thinking, no nothing, just enjoy it and the first thing that comes to mind.
Red velvet. And the dashboard of like an old Chevy. or some kind of old American car that has bucket seats. That doesn't have bucket seats. It's got the long bench seat,
Okay.
right? Where it goes all the way across, and just like the sun-bleached, maybe leather dashboard, not dashboard. What's the word for that part? The car.
The console, the dashboard, like in front of the steering wheel and everything.
under the. There's a word for this. Under the windshield. Yeah, it's the dashboard.
dashboard.
It's the dashboard.
Yeah.
I'm tripping. Oh, whatever. Yeah, that. But like sun bleached, like maybe leather, probably leather, not plastic. Before plastic, that.
So do you have any kind of memory where you were like in that environment? Because that's a very, I'm not gonna say it's very specific, but there's a lot of not generalities in with that. But like, were you ever sitting in that seat in that scenario where this kind of brings back that level of memory for you?
Yes.
And what was that?
It was actually a Fiat. When I was little, we had a Fiat. It was old, and it was like, all open, not bucket seats, nothing but coming up. You could just walk all the way across the if you're a little kid, you could just walk all the way across the front row, and had the big old just like gear shift sticking out, like flopping around all over the place, and
Family car
windows that
driving
you
around?
roll down, everything like that. And this is the 80s. And just, my dad driving around, my grandpa driving me to and from school and that, because it was like the old car that my parents didn't use. And yeah,
And was this here or back there?
Houston.
Oh, Houston. Oh, okay.
Houston.
Oh, who? Houston.
that.
Heat. Got it.
Yes.
I grew up North Houston, so I get
really?
it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I grew up right outside of Huntsville.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm from Houston, Sharpstown.
Oh, okay.
Like Bel Air area.
But
713.
but you see, like whenever you start, because I love the social aspect of whiskey and being able to have conversations. So with like what just happened, okay, what does it remind you of? And then you telling it, and now you saying you're from Houston, like, okay, cool. I now can associate with that. And now that I've tried again after saying that, I'm like, yeah, it has kind of the humidity and the summer air where it has definitely the stickiness kind of the scent that's just everywhere in Houston, where it rains for 15 minutes every day, just enough to make everything steam.
Yeah.
But it has that definite kind of taste in the air. And yeah, I get it. It's the musty kind of note that's in a lot of people find in Weller 107 and a lot of the Weller stuff.
I don't know whether it's the tea, but I'm getting a hint of jasmine now that you're talking about Houston and the humidity.
This is what we like to do is we'll chase the whiskey with the tea. So we'll have some whiskey and then chase it with the tea.
And this is shockingly a really good tea pairing with this. Like it works well. I like it.
Yeah, really nice. The chrysanthemum and something in the whiskey balance each other really perfectly. They're on the same frequency and at the same amplitude and the same intensity, just like bzz, like that. And then
For me, this is like a sweetness on the
Very
initial
sweet.
blush. It's very sweet. You get it's got a density that I'd never really expect from most wheated bourbons. This one has a little bit more thickness to it, for lack of a better word. Most
Like really humid air.
yeah.
yeah, like the air in Houston, exactly.
Most wheated bourbons, to me, have something missing in the middle because it doesn't have that rye spice quality. It tends to be sweeter, caramel, thin, maybe a slight cherry type of note in there as well. But this one also has that warm Kentucky hug. It actually sits and warms your chest as it goes down.
So this is wheat and corn?
So it's going to be
I'm telling you.
so with bourbon it's going to be with bourbon it has to be at least 51% corn. With a wheated bourbon, the next grain in that oatmeal, let's say that you're having multiple grain oatmeal, so it's going to be mostly corn, and the next most popular grain in there is going to be wheat, and then usually there's barley, because barley has the enzymes to make fermentation happen. So a wheated bourbon, it just means that it is at least 51% corn. The second grain is going to be wheat.
Got it.
And then there's usually some barley in there. High rye or a high rye bourbon is going to be mostly corn, and then rye would be the second predominant grain. A 4-grain bourbon would actually have 4 grains in there, and it has to be at least 51% corn, and then the other 3 grains are usually wheat and rye and barley. But there are multiple types and styles of wheat and grains that can go in there as well, depending on the person making it. But yes, this is very nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's lovely, and it's definitely a lot better knowing your story about your grandpa. Like,
Yeah,
that's
and
real.
it's one of those things that for me and how important he is to me, and like the man practically raised me for most of my life, and he is probably holistically to blame for the way that I turned out. But it's something that whenever I first tried it at 10 or 11 years old, I remembered that it was so hot, it was so bitter, it was so astringent. Like, I don't understand how people drank this. And as I went on my whiskey journey, I realized that I'd kind of arrived whenever I was at my grandfather's house and he pulled some of it out and poured a glass, and he and I were both sitting there sipping on it and just talking. And it was like, okay, now I'm sitting enjoying whiskey with my grandfather.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about hard to get, hard to find.
And that is going to be completely different.
And this one is a 10-year-old bottled in bond. The Bottled in Bond Act basically came around to basically create a means of having regulations around what is going inside of this so that people, consumers, can be assured that they're getting a quality product. So it has to be at least 4 years old. It needs to be the product
In the barrel. It's got to be 4 years.
4 years
In the barrel.
product of one distillery, one season, one distiller. So this is a
That's
lot.
what bottled and bond
That's,
means.
and from a bonded warehouse.
And didn't the distiller have to be there when it was distilled all the way to when it was bottled? Had to be
Correct.
the same guy over the process.
Yes.
Cool. That's like tea.
Talk about
That's,
some golden
that's,
handcuffs.
that's what you call the tea master, the person who oversees the production. And tea that's produced by a single master from beginning to end is better than tea that has passed through the hands of different masters.
So the thing with this is that this is going to be one of those things that if you're on a shopping list at your local liquor store, you would have to be one of their top customers.
Hell
You're
yeah.
buying constantly. You're given a ticket in a lottery for the chance to purchase.
Chance to buy one of those.
Yeah,
Well,
you didn't win
You
this
didn't win it.
bottle.
My.
You won the chance to
Hello there.
purchase this
And
bottle.
if you're in Texas, 107 is definitely in that kind of realm as well, where you have to know somebody. Where liquor stores will get, let's say Specs, they'll get 50 cases of a kind of whiskey. A Specs might get 3 bottles of that.
Yeah. Or 6 bottles of this.
Apparently Costco's got like some like rare whiskeys that they'll just like throw out there occasionally.
In California.
In California, the place
yeah.
that they're allowed to sell it.
Yeah, because the
Right, you can't
Costco
sell
here
it.
is.
The ABC is the thing here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so this one is also a weeded bourbon, so at least 51% corn.
So what's this fancy bottle called?
This is the Old Fitzgerald
Old
10-year-old
Fitzgerald.
bottled
And
in bond.
Under U.S. government supervision. 10 years aged.
Is this
Kentucky?
is this the high rye one?
Here.
Or-
I think this is a weeded as well.
So, funny thing that is not officially a thing with whiskeys, but ends up kind of happening a lot. You'll notice that a lot of times with green labels, there'll be ryes, and
we talked
and
about
you'll have people like this. As soon as Richard pulled this out, I knew what this was, so I wasn't worried about it. But I've had people that pulled out. I've had people that pulled out green label stuff, and I don't like rye.
Yeah.
Rye is not a flavor that I enjoy because of, ironically enough, memories. So I don't drink it, and I don't like it.
So the old Stitzel Weller distillery, this is was one of theirs. It ended up, I believe it's Heaven Hill, that is the distillery that this is coming out of currently. Bardstown, Kentucky, is also. So the funny thing is there have been openings and closings and purchases and buyouts, and a lot of these names, the older names, have been bought out by other companies that may or may not have produced it. There's even a distillery out there that may have a drop of the liquor from the, it's called Blade and Bow, may have a drop left of the liquor that was from the original Stitzel Weller distillery, and there were actually supposedly a number of keys on the door of the distillery, and every bottle of that whiskey has a key on the bottle, in memory of that. So this is
I almost bought a bottle of Blade and Bow, which is kind of interesting.
yeah, it's a strange history that goes on. There's lies, damn lies, and there's whiskey. So most of the things that go historically can be very problematic. The stories can be just a marketing thing, but for some people, these deep dives are the fun part of finding out more about the spirits. I don't like going down those rabbit holes because it's really easy to get tripped up in your memory unless you have notes sitting in front of you.
One of the things, we were talking about the rise, and sorry to kind of take a hard right, we were talking about rise and how whenever I'm talking to people with like tastings and doing memories and everything else, one of the reasons that I don't like rise is a lot of people get a very vegetal kind of, and they call it a Christmas tree note. I'm allergic to one thing on the face of the planet, it's a Christmas tree. So whenever I drink a rye, I'm like, okay, yes, I appreciate what it is, and I'm not allergic to that, but like the smell almost makes my eyes start to water, and I'm like, oh, this is awful. I don't understand why people drink this.
Yeah.
But I know that I'm unique because of an allergy that I have. There is one other kind of whiskey that I drink very sparingly because of another kind of smell memory, and Richard and I have had this conversation before. And if we have more whiskey, I might actually tell this story. But it's a very strong smell memory for me, and it's one that I try to actively avoid. So I don't drink that kind of whiskey. But I'm more into the memory and how does, and you called it the chi, the tea. How does just drinking it make you feel? What kind of memories does it invoke? And I really like that as a way of drinking and tasting whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can learn so much about a person.
What you just did with the whiskey is exactly what I do. I have a cha chi class, and that's what we do in my cha chi class. Is we go through the different parts of the body, from the nose to the mouth to the throat to the body to just your perception, and the way that the tea changes those things. So it's what you did is exactly what we do with the tea, and this is kind of becoming a theme of this show almost. But really, what's good about the whiskey or good about the tea for me is so much more in that organic interface between the drinker and the drank than it is about some inherent quality of the thing itself. Like, is it really worth that? If it's worth it to you, like you're 107, that bottle, is it worth $250? It's worth it to you because you want to give some to your grandpa, and that's worth it to you. This tastes fucking amazing. But
This one,
this is fucking
This
awesome.
one was $165, so I actually paid MSRP for this one. But it was one of those things where it was just luck that I was given the ability.
You won the lottery.
I won the lottery.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at that. That almost feels unfair.
So this seems like a really good place to finish off with this first little round.
Beautiful.
And it's been wonderful to have you here, Ryan.
Cheers.
We'll do a couple more things tonight, and we've got Sohan here from West China Tea. Thank you for joining us. We really enjoy doing this, and there are many ways to explore whiskey, and Ryan's way is one way. Your way could be another way. It's all a matter of what you like and the way you like to drink it. So cheers.
Just enjoy the journey too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, this whiskey I like better, but the pairing was better with the one.
Yes, and I will.
The tea went better with
That
the
one,
107.
because of the higher proof and because of how it's aged, the barrel notes and everything else, it does kind of overpower the tea. But that 107, I'm like, I might do a little pour here in a second to do that again.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. Well, great. Let's keep it rolling. This is awesome. West China Tea House. We're here in Austin. We're moving soon, but we're still in this one spot on I-35. So come check us out in this
Cool
location.
spot. People need to come just to check it out and see it. I like
Exactly.
it. I walked in, I was
Exactly.
like, oh, I like it. It feels like a home, and this
Thank
is
you.
very warm and inviting.
Thank you. We've worked really hard to make this freaking place right off I-35 feel like cozy,
Yeah, I love
nice
it.
and warm. So come check it out while we exist. And if you can't come check us out, then go to our website and buy some tea, and you can drink our tea while you watch us drink our tea. And we got all the stuff that you need to do it. So thank you guys. Oh yeah, Instagram West China Tea, TikTok West China Tea, YouTube Tea House Ghost. Season 3 in process now. did that earlier today. Me and Corey.
Full disclosure, this isn't a whiskey place, so don't bring your whiskey.
This is actually an alcohol-free space most of the time. Literally the only time there's ever alcohol in this building. Even when we have staff parties, there's no alcohol. Birthday parties, there's no alcohol. The only time we ever have alcohol in this building is for this show or other whiskey-related activities.
I was about to say, right now it looks like a small bar.
Yeah, we can see the floor. It's like a fancy ass party's about to go down. Yeah,
Richard's always like, hey, bring some things that you think are interesting. All right.
Yeah, but whiskey and tea, there's a lot of the things that they have in common that people really enjoy about each of those things. The craft, the tradition, and most of all, that essential thing, that gestalt that hits you and gives you that emotional response. So definitely looking forward to more of this.
All right.